Hi guys, welcome. Today we're looking at the lovely hunk of glass that is the Voigtlander Nokton 75mm f1.5 VM vintage line. Here are my Leica M240. Let's take a look. So yes, hello, welcome. Matt from MrLeica.com. Voigtlander kindly sent me another lens. Today we have the Voigtlander 75 1.5 Nokton vintage line VM, which basically means like an M mount. So that is the box. I guess first things first, what is in the box other than the lens? If you saw my recent video on the Ultron 35 1.7, like the 35mm lens, you get both the lens and a lens hood in the box. So to recap, the 40mm 1.2 and the 50mm 1.2, you don't get a hood. But the 75 1.5, you do get a hood. You get a nice vented push-on hood. So it's like some of the vintage hoods where it screws on the side. As you can probably see, it's still in its original bag, so I haven't used this hood. So I'll leave it as is in the bag. You do, of course, get the front and rear lens caps, which are kind of the push-in lens caps if you're used to Voigtlander gear. Really good lens caps. As with the Voigtlander Ultron video, I used this as kind of real world testing. I took it with me to Poland for a week and it was with me for 18 photo shoots. 75mm is slightly longer than I'd normally use for most of my shoots, but I tried to use it where possible and it was really fantastic, especially for the outdoor sessions. So before we look at some example photos, let's first look at the specifications. How big is the lens? I'd say it's bigger than many of the Leica M-mount lenses. And I do actually own the 75mm Leica. Here's the Leica 75 f2, Voigtlander 75 1.5. The advantage maybe of the Leica, it has a pull-in, push-out hood. The Leica is a smaller lens, both in terms of filter size and dimensions overall, although the height is pretty much the same. The built-in hood is quite useful on the Leica, but if you're interested in the Leica, see that video, I can link it below. In terms of lenses most people may have seen more often, I'll show you the size compared to a SLR lens. So here's the 75 1.5 and here's an 85 1.4 nickel. And you can see compared to an SLR lens, it is kind of really nice and compact. I've not reviewed many Nikon lenses yet, but maybe through 2021 I'll do some reviews on some great Nikon lenses. But back on topic. So what can I tell you about the 75 1.5? So the 75 1.5 has nice half stops, aperture stops, going from 1.5 to f16. And it also has a close focus distance of 0.7 meters through to infinity, with a really nice smooth focus through. Now if you like getting close to the subject, 0.7 meters close focus distance on a 70mm lens is a really nice thing to have. I bought the Leica originally because it has the same 0.7 meters close focus distance. And in reality, it does give you kind of a really nice magnification for kind of headshots on a full frame camera like the M240 I was using. In terms of using it on different cameras, I found the 75mm on the Leica CL a bit too long. So I use it almost only on the full frame M240 for the photos in this video. So to recap, filter size 58mm, quite a large filter for Leica mount lenses. If for example your own filters up to 52mm and smaller, you would need to buy more filters if you bought this lens, if you needed to shoot in bright conditions, for example. As with the Voigtlander Ultron 35 1.7, you can buy this lens in both black and silver. The difference seems to be, at the time of making this video, the black lens is the same price as the silver lens for the 75mm, whereas with the 35mm Ultron, the silver lens is quite a bit more expensive than the black lens, which kind of holds true when you're buying Leica lenses and buying black or silver. But Voigtlander, currently the 75 silver is the same price as the black lens. In terms of weight, this lens weighs 350 grams. I'd say it's slightly lighter than the Leica actually. But either way, it's still reasonably heavy for like an M-mount lens. If you're like an SL or SL2 shooter, this would be a nice little pocket lens for you, because compared to the autofocus lenses, this would be a much nicer size. Okay, and then for my kind of real world testing, what can I tell you about the character of this lens? I'd say it is sharp enough wide open for my female portraits at 1.5, but you do get quite a bit more sharpness at f2. So I was shooting some at f2, and when I was shooting this with film cameras, I was stopping it down to f2. I stopped it down a little for landscape photos, but for me it was sharp enough at f2. So you're only really stopping down to get the kind of the increased depth of field. And in terms of depth of field, if you love your kind of super shallow depth of field portraits, this lens might be for you. It gives you kind of the equivalent of, say, an 85 1.5 on a Nikon or a Canon, that kind of look. I'll bring up some examples, but the background just kind of melts to absolutely nothing. You could have anything in the background and it just totally nukes the background to nothingness within kind of working kind of 0.7 meters to 1 meter of your subject, as I tend to do. The background is just totally gone, whether it's at 1.5 or at f2. Really nice. Also tried the shallow depth of field for some street photos in the street, not street photos as such, and it gives you quite a nice foreground background separation if you're kind of trying to create something maybe a bit more arty from maybe something quite standard. So here I was taking a photo of a bridge, and you can see the shallow depth of field creates quite a nice depth. In terms of colours, I'd say this lens holds true to the 40mm 1.2, the 50mm 1.2 and the Ultron 35 1.7, in that the colours are very kind of vibrant, saturated and kind of pleasing to the eye without being too much. I didn't need to bump up the saturation in kind of Lightroom after taking the pictures. So really nice colours. Contrast, I enjoy contrasty lenses, and I'd definitely say that there was enough contrast at 1.5 for my personal taste, and then the contrast will increase as you stop the lens down. So for me, f2 might be a nice sweet spot between sharpness and contrast, yet still give me a nice shallow depth of field. Vignetting being a longer lens, I didn't really notice any vignetting. I'm not saying there isn't any, but I didn't notice any in kind of the real world testing. As with some of my other videos, do note that the photos shared in this video have got my Mr. Leica presets applied, which add a little bit of vignetting to the photos. So don't assume that the vignetting seen in the photos in this video are because of the lens, because I've added it after, which I'm sorry, I realise is no help whatsoever to you guys trying to determine what the lens can do. So I'd say try to assume no vignetting and you'll be close enough. Now in terms of flare, I'd say it has the what is becoming in my mind the classic Voigtlander flare, which is pink saturated veiling type flare if you shoot at the sun. I saw it on the 40 1.2, the 50 1.2, the 35 1.7 and now the 75 1.5. But because I shoot mostly black and white, I'm only seeing this because I'm converting the photos to colour to test the lens to share with you guys. So this may be true for all my other lenses, but I've never seen it because I shoot in black and white. I find the flare very pleasing in black and white, but you may find it slightly overpowering if you shoot colour. I did manage to make the lens flare slightly and kind of get the classic kind of arc of colour in one corner of the photo in kind of real life use shooting at light sources. But of course the lens does come with a lens hood, so if you're not shooting at the sun, you can pretty much avoid flare in all of your images. In terms of bokeh, I found it quite pleasing. I'd say it's normally kind of oval style bokeh. Obviously it completely depends on what you're photographing, and it may have been that it just so happened that what I was photographing was giving those types of bokeh shapes. But I'd say compared to the 35 1.7 which I was shooting alongside this on the same trip, the Ultron 35mm gave complete kind of circle bokeh, where this gave kind of more long oval bokeh. And I'd say this is slightly more pleasing of the two lenses in terms of maybe a bit more arty in kind of how it renders the scene. And lastly, you can get really nice sun stars from this lens if you stop the lens down. I'll bring up an example shot from the apartment where I was staying. So here are a few more example photos shot with the 75mm 1.5 on the Leica M240. And while we're looking at these, I'll just talk about its strengths. I'd say, depending on your taste, for me personally, I'd say it's an absolutely fantastic lens for portraits outdoors because you get these really nice subject background separation. However, it's a little bit too long for me personally shooting indoors because I tend to shoot 50mm. so I found it a bit too long, and it was basically getting part of their face in, and I wanted to get kind of half body or kind of 3/4 shots. But that's all obviously personal preference. If you're, say, moving from a DSLR to Leica, or if you're going to use this lens on, say, a Sony or a Fuji, and if your favourite lens on your SLR was your 85 1.4, then I'd highly recommend the 75 1.5, because it gives you the same kind of really nice subject background separation and really kind of nice rendering for, say, for portraits in my example. I actually also found the 75mm a really nice focal length for doing kind of cityscape type photos, basically walking around type photos. The 75mm focal length compared to the 35 I was also using gave me a really nice kind of compression to the images, and as you can see in these examples, it was really nice when you have kind of a longer scene where you want to bring the scene kind of closer to the lens. So I found the 75 really nice for my outdoor photos. And then I guess the important question, would I recommend this lens? Yes, I'd absolutely recommend this lens. And as I say, with all the Voigtlander lenses, if you live in the UK, go to the Robert White website. I can link it in the description below, because they're the UK stockist. If you're buying it outside the UK, I'd say check Amazon. Again, I can link it below. And of course, if you want to try and get a slightly cheaper version, you can check eBay for a second-hand copy. Again, I'll link eBay also in the description. Would I buy this lens? Personally, I would not buy this lens, because my brain is totally kind of wired to shoot 50mm. I can visualize a 50mm shot before I take it. So even on the crop sensor, like a CL, I tend to shoot 35mm to give me 50mm, and then on full frame I shoot 50mm. Yes, you could say it's very boring, but it just works for my mostly indoor portraits. If I was living somewhere where it was nicer weather and there was nicer light outside, I wouldn't hesitate to get a longer lens such as the 75 1.5. As I say, it's definitely sharp enough to use wide open, which is a really important point for me if buying a fast lens. There's no point buying a big, fat, heavy, expensive piece of glass if you've got to stop it down to 2.8 to get half decent photos. So well done Voigtlander for making, again, really great lenses where it is sharp enough to use wide open. I think that is really important. Price-wise, it's a fraction of the cost compared to the Leica offering, but because I already own the Leica lens, I'm not going to own two 75mm lenses, and I don't really use the 75mm lens I already own. And I guess to finish, a big thank you to Voigtlander UK for sending me this lens to test, to share with you guys. If you use this lens or have any thoughts, please let me know in the description. It'd be interesting to hear if other people are using this lens. And if you enjoy these types of lens videos and you're not yet subscribed, feel free to subscribe, because there are many, many more lens and camera videos coming in 2021. Please hit the like button if you found this video useful, and as always, a big thanks to my patrons. Thanks for watching, and see you back here for the next video. Bye.